Something is happening in Los Angeles that Major League Baseball executives hoped they would never have to confront. Shohei Ohtani is no longer simply proving that a two-way player can survive in the modern game. He is proving that the right two-way player can completely change how a championship team is built. And once front offices around baseball realized where this was heading, the conversation changed immediately. Because Ohtani is not becoming just another superstar. He is becoming an advantage the other 29 organizations may never be able to replicate. Quick question before we go any further. How exactly are opposing teams supposed to compete with a player who can dominate a game as both an ace pitcher and an elite power hitter? Drop your answer in the comments, because that question is becoming increasingly uncomfortable inside baseball. Every executive can try to build a great lineup. Every executive can spend millions building a great rotation. Only one organization currently has Shohei Ohtani doing both. That is the part many fans miss when they focus only on the highlights. The home runs are incredible, the pitching performances are unforgettable, and the awards continue piling up. But executives are not watching the highlights the way fans are. They are looking at roster construction, payroll flexibility, postseason strategy, and long-term competitive advantage. They see one player solving problems that normally require multiple all-stars. And that is what makes Ohtani different from every other superstar in baseball. Think about what a general manager usually has to accomplish during an off-season. He needs to find a middle-of-the-order slugger capable of changing a game with one swing. Then he needs to find a frontline starter capable of shutting down another team's lineup in October. Those are normally two different players, two different contracts, and two different roster spots. The Dodgers can receive both forms of impact from the same player. Even with his workload carefully managed, that changes everything. The frightening part is that Los Angeles may still be learning how to maximize him. This may not even be the finished version of Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers spent years carefully rebuilding his pitching workload after another elbow surgery. Now, they're discovering how to use both sides of his game throughout an entire season while keeping him healthy for October. If they perfect that balance, every opponent in baseball has an even bigger problem waiting for them. Imagine preparing for a playoff series against the Dodgers. Your coaching staff has to build one complete game plan for Ohtani, the hitter, who can change a game with one mistake over the middle of the plate. Then they have to build another plan for Ohtani, the pitcher, whose arsenal forces hitters into completely different adjustments. Your pitchers have to face him. Your hitters may also have to face him. And your manager has to prepare for both possibilities before the first pitch is even thrown. That is not normal postseason preparation. It is an entire week built around one player. And the pressure does not disappear when Ohtani leaves the mound. Because under baseball's two-way player rule, he can start the game as the pitcher, stop pitching later in the game, and remain in the lineup as the designated hitter. Think about that for a second. An opposing team can finally get him off the mound and still have to deal with him at the plate. Normally, forcing a starting pitcher out of a game feels like progress. It means you've reached the bullpen and eliminated one of the opponent's biggest weapons. Against Ohtani, that progress barely exists. One version of the problem disappears, but another remains in the batter's box waiting for its next opportunity. The pitcher may be gone. The superstar hitter is still there. That is where the competitive advantage becomes unlike anything baseball has seen in decades. The baseball advantage is enormous, but the business advantage may be even bigger. Ohtani does not simply produce runs and strikeouts. He brings worldwide attention, sponsorships, merchandise sales, and international audiences that very few athletes on Earth can generate. When the Dodgers signed him, they did not just acquire another MVP. They acquired one of the biggest global sports icons in the world. Every home run becomes international news. Every pitching appearance attracts millions of additional viewers. Now ask yourself what that means for every team trying to compete with Los Angeles. They're not simply trying to beat the Dodgers on the field. They're trying to overcome the financial momentum Ohtani helps create. More attention creates more opportunities. More opportunities strengthen an organization that was already one of baseball's most powerful franchises. The result is a cycle every rival executive understands. Ohtani helps the Dodgers win, and winning only makes Ohtani and the Dodgers even bigger. That creates a problem no front office can easily solve. Baseball teams can copy successful strategies. They copy defensive shifts, advanced analytics, bullpen specialization, and modern player development. But how exactly do you copy Shohei Ohtani? You cannot draft another one on demand. You cannot spend your way into another one. And you certainly cannot manufacture another athlete capable of performing at this level on both sides of the game. That leaves rival executives with three difficult choices. They can spend years searching for another legitimate two-way superstar. They can spend hundreds of millions assembling multiple players whose combined production comes close to matching Ohtani's impact. Or they can simply accept that every time they play the Dodgers, they begin the series facing an advantage no other organization possesses. None of those options is particularly encouraging. Now consider how expectations around Ohtani have changed. Most superstars hit a massive home run and dominate sports headlines for days. Ohtani does it, and people immediately ask when he is pitching again. He throws a dominant game, and the conversation immediately shifts back to his next offensive milestone. Every achievement instantly becomes the starting point for another expectation. The bar keeps moving higher, yet somehow he continues reaching it. That should be impossible pressure for any athlete. The attention has grown, the contract became historic, and the expectations have only increased since arriving in Los Angeles. Yet his performance continues to match the hype. The swing still produces some of the hardest contact in baseball. The speed still pressures opposing defenses. And the pitching gives the Dodgers another elite weapon whenever he takes the mound. There has been no moment where the pressure appears too great. That is why executives around baseball are paying such close attention. This is not about fear in the emotional sense. It is about recognizing that one organization possesses something every other organization desperately wants but cannot realistically acquire. You cannot trade for another Shohei Ohtani. You cannot draft one with certainty. And you cannot simply write a bigger check because there is no equivalent player available. But the biggest concern may not be what Ohtani is doing today. It may be what he inspires tomorrow. Young players around the world are watching him refuse the traditional choice between pitching and hitting. Development programs are beginning to rethink when prospects should specialize. If even a handful of elite two-way players eventually reach the majors because of Ohtani's influence, he will have changed the future of player development across the sport. And that leads to the most frightening question of all. What happens if the Dodgers eventually discover the perfect formula for using Shohei Ohtani in October? What happens if they unlock the ideal balance between protecting his body and maximizing both sides of his game? Because if that day arrives, the rest of Major League Baseball won't just be chasing the Dodgers anymore. They'll be chasing a blueprint that may only work because one player exists, and his name is Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani may have reached the one stage of greatness that is even more dangerous than dominance. He has become expected, not because opponents have figured him out, but because baseball has somehow started treating the impossible like it's normal. A towering home run no longer shocks anyone. A dominant outing on the mound barely surprises people anymore. And when greatness starts feeling routine, that player has completely changed the standard. That is exactly where Ohtani stands today. The Dodgers no longer seem overwhelmed by the challenge of managing a two-way superstar. Instead, they appear increasingly comfortable with it. They carefully monitor his workload, protect his health, and adjust his schedule with one goal in mind. Not winning another game in July. Winning the games that matter most in October. And that is the part the rest of baseball should be watching very closely. Imagine a postseason series where Ohtani is fully healthy. One night, he gives the Dodgers quality innings from the mound. The next night, he is back leading off the lineup as one of baseball's most dangerous hitters. Opposing managers never get a break. Every pitching decision, every bullpen move, and every matchup has to account for one player who can completely change the direction of a series. That is not normal playoff preparation. That is preparing for something baseball has rarely seen before. the psychological pressure is just as significant. Imagine being an opposing pitcher walking into Dodger Stadium, knowing millions of people are waiting to watch your first matchup against Ohtani. One mistake could become the biggest highlight on every sports network before the inning is over. Then imagine your own hitters having to face him on the mound a day later. There is no escaping his presence. Every game somehow revolves around number 17. That level of attention affects entire organizations. Front offices love talking about projections, statistics, and probability models. But they also understand confidence, momentum, and pressure. They know one bad inning can change an entire postseason. They know one superstar can force an opponent into mistakes before the game even begins. And they know Ohtani creates that pressure simply by showing up. Sometimes the threat of what he might do is almost as valuable as what he actually does. Then there is the business side, and this may be the part executives fear most. Ohtani is not just helping the Dodgers win baseball games. He is helping strengthen one of baseball's richest organizations even further. International sponsorships, television audiences, merchandise sales, and global attention continue flowing toward Los Angeles. Every milestone becomes worldwide news. Every highlight reaches millions of people who might never have watched another regular season baseball game. That creates a cycle that becomes harder to stop every year. Ohtani helps the Dodgers win. Winning attracts more attention. More attention strengthens the Dodgers brand. A stronger brand makes Los Angeles even more attractive to future free agents. Suddenly, players are not just choosing between contracts. They're choosing between joining one of baseball's biggest global brands or going somewhere else. That is an advantage statistics alone cannot measure. The Angels had Shohei Ohtani for years. They had one of the greatest talents baseball has ever seen, but they could never consistently build a championship contender around him. The Dodgers inherited something completely different. They already possessed elite scouting, financial strength, player development, and championship expectations. Ohtani did not need to carry the entire franchise. He simply became the most dangerous piece inside a machine that was already built to win. That combination should concern every front office in baseball. A superstar on an average team can usually be contained over time. A superstar inside one of baseball's best-run organizations becomes something else entirely. Every successful season makes the partnership stronger. Every postseason appearance increases confidence. Every championship pushes the Dodgers even further ahead. And Ohtani remains right at the center of everything. There's also another effect many people overlook. Young players around the world are watching him. For decades, elite prospects were told they would eventually have to choose between pitching and hitting. Ohtani ignored that advice and proved it could be done at the highest level. Now, development programs are beginning to think differently. Scouts are beginning to think differently. Even front offices are beginning to think differently. One player may have permanently changed how future generations are developed.